African Child theme for 2023, which is leveraging on digital technology to achieve Agenda 2040 for an African fit for children. So you're most welcome to this webinar. We are going to be having a very exciting array of speakers that will be unpacking what modern technology means for the children of Africa, as well as some very movers and shakers in the African region in terms of children, giving us their voices in terms of how they feel can leverage on technology for advancements of their rights. So without taking much time, I'd like to check if either we can give another maybe 2 to 3 minutes to have others join in, or we proceed in the interest of time. Frecia, could you just give us an indication whether we proceed? All right, we can't hear from Frecia. Technical support. Can you just check with Frecia if she can hear us, or Jennifer?
Hi, Yvonne. My apologies. Yes, I think there's something, my system sound is an issue. Yes. As you said, please give me 2 minutes. I confirm with interpretation.
All right, sure, that's fine. So, colleagues, just give 2 minutes so that we can confirm with interpretation, and then we can be on our way to start. Thank you. I see a hand up, Brian King. Your hand is up. You have the floor. Brian, can you hear us, Brian King?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Brian. Or you'd like to be upgraded to co-host or analyst?
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm here. We just wanted to be sure that we can be heard. Thank you so much, Yvonne. I think we are good. The interpreters are on. I think it's for the panel for people to choose the language. We can officially start.
All right. Thank you very much, Frecia and Jennifer. So, colleague, as mentioned, welcome to this webinar on leveraging on digital technology to achieve Agenda 2040 for an African fit for children, as we commemorate the 2023 Day of the African Child. As you know, the Day of the African Child is a momentous occasion when we remember the children that died in South Africa advancing for equal access to education. And this has been a very important day across the African region, where we recall the commitments made by these children to voice out their opinions on a very important right they were calling for. Also, now the Day of the African Child, ladies and gentlemen, is used for us to brainstorm on how we can protect and advance children's rights in Africa with children, for children, ultimately for the benefits, so that they grow into successful adults as they transition. So without taking much time, as mentioned, we are going to be having a number of speakers, and I'd like to give the floor to Jennifer to provide us welcoming remarks. Jennifer is the Executive Director and founder of Mtoto News, who has a wide experience in working on children's rights, particularly leveraging on the digital space and using more technology to advance children's rights. So it gives me great pleasure to give Jennifer Kaberi the floor to give us welcome remarks. Jennifer, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this conversation today, and as we commemorate the day in a very interesting era in terms of in the digital age. And in Africa, Africa's digital growth is growing in 100%. Okay, it's growing at 400%, and this has put us in a situation where how can leverage this amazing phenomena. I don't want to call it a tool anymore, but can we live this wonderful continent? So this webinar is to be able to have a discussion on how can we leverage on technology to achieve Agenda 2040. All the 10
Seems like there's technical glitch. Technical support. Is there something wrong with the colleagues in Nairobi? Perhaps they could provide the statement without the video for bandwidth purposes.
We also can't hear them. Please, can you check your audio and bandwidth as well, please?
Jennifer, we can't hear you.
Madam Chair, I think she's saying move on.
All right. I think she's saying we should move on. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. That's fine. Thank you so much for those brief remarks, Jen. I would also now want to give the floor to the FAWE Executive Director, Dr. Mawe Athamwezi, who will give us the opening remarks for this webinar. Martha, it's a sincere pleasure to have you on the call as we commemorate this very important day in our African region. I'll provide you the floor to give us the opening remarks. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying, can everybody hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. Thank you so much to everybody that has made it to this webinar. And I think from the introductions, we all attach a lot of value to this day. And it's a day that all of us commemorate, but bearing in mind the circumstances under which we all do commemorate this. I want to recognize Honorable Dr. Robert Doya, who is the Special Rapporteur on Children in Armed Conflicts. I know he's not present in the room, but he has made contribution through the video. Dr. Chiwana, the Regional Humanitarian Policy Advocacy Manager, Save the Children SRO. Caroline Mugwa, Director Public Policy, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Head of Policy from GSMA. Suleiman Kinyunyu, the Government Relationships and Policy and Head of Safety Africa from Microsoft. Willy Blosso, Regional Coordinator for the Africa ECPAT International. I also want to recognize the youth representatives in the room, and that is Brian King and Daisy Njoroge. I would also like in a special way to recognize Ms. Naima Mungai, the Program Manager, African Women Journalists Program. And I recognize all those that are online and participating into this webinar. Our moderator, Yvonne, I do recognize your presence. Thank you again for joining this webinar. It's with great pleasure and profound honor that I welcome you all to this remarkable event as we gather here today to celebrate the African child. I know we celebrate this every other year on the 16th of June, but today as we celebrate it on the 15th, it is still in line with the theme of the year. And it is important that this year we are discussing a topic which is very significant, a topic that touches the lives, particularly the lives of the young people. And that's the theme of the rights of the child in the digital environment. I think I cannot emphasize this anymore because we all know that the world we are living in today is a world of digital. And what does that mean to the young people out there? What does it mean to each and every person that is out there? In a world that is rapidly advancing in technology, and there are issues of connectedness. We can only be connected these days through technology, and it means all of us need to be part of the technology. We must recognize the importance of ensuring that our children are not left behind, but rather are protected and empowered in this digital era that we are all living in today. Ladies and gentlemen, I have watched in both awe and admiration as the newest generation gets inculcated into digital savviness from as young as a few months old. I know personally, I may not belong to the group of the young ones. I belong to the group of, I would call myself a grandmother and a mother to many. But much as I don't belong to this digital era of the young people, in all that we do, we need technology. And when you have children in the house, you will realize that as young as 1 year, they will all give sounds of what happens. They will all be telling you about Cocomelon. And in many cases, you will have to ask, so what is this? Is it the melon that we are eating? What melon is this? But they know what it means. And there is also what is famous on YouTube, Miss Rachel. They are all into that. And indeed, this tells us that technology has also defined the new age of parenthood. We all have to adjust. It comes with challenge. It comes with a lot of commitment from all angles, particularly in supporting our young people during this age. And in as much as the digital environment holds tremendous potential for growth, for learning, and for innovation, you'll also agree with me that it also presents a myriad of challenges and risks, especially for our young ones. As we gather here today, as we discuss this theme for the year. Let us reflect upon the fundamental rights of each and every child, regardless of their geographical location, regardless of their social background or economic status. Every child has a right to the education, to express themselves freely, and they also have a right to be protected from harm and to have their voices heard. These rights should not be compromised or forgotten when it comes to the digital sphere. There are rights that are offline and there are rights that are online. So when we talk about the digital sphere, we are recognizing the rights of the children online. Today we have a unique opportunity to delve into the issues that our children face in the digital world and explore how best we can protect and promote their rights. We must also collectively address the challenges of online safety. There are many challenges. There are issues of privacy. There are issues of cyberbullying, access to quality education, and digital literacy. All these call for protection for the young people. And by doing so, we can pave the way for a brighter future where our children can thrive in the digital environment while enjoying their rights to the fullest. I know there are usually sentiments around digital. Let's not look at it only in terms of the challenges that it brings. Let's mitigate the challenges, but also look at it in terms of the positive that it brings, the good side of it. And this can only be possible when many of us understand that the children need technology, but at the same time, they need to be protected. They need to be supported. They need to be guided. And to achieve this, it's crucial that we work together. There is no question about that. We need to work together as a community. We need to work together as parents. We need to work together as educators, as policymakers, including technology companies, civil society organizations, and not leaving the children themselves behind. Collaboration, innovation, and collective responsibility will be the guiding principle that lead us towards a safer and more inclusive digital space for our children. Today's webinar is a platform for knowledge exchange. I know we are quite a number of us from different organizations, and as we come from the different organizations, we come in with the different experiences, we come in with the different ideas, and therefore, this webinar is an opportunity for us to exchange, to dialogue, and also to be an inspiration to each and every one of us. We've assembled in a diverse group of experts. We are all advocates. We are all leaders in different spheres. And we also have the young leaders who will share their insights. The young people will also share their experiences and initiatives to promote the rights of the child and the digital environment. As we speak for the young people, we also do recognize that we don't plan for them, but we plan with them. We don't advocate for them, but we advocate with them. And that at the back of our minds makes the world move in a direction that we would all want to see. And it reduces on the number of the challenges of struggles among the young people. So as we embark on the journey today, let us remember that our children are not just passive recipients of the digital world, but they are the digital natives themselves. They are the future shapers of the society. It's also our duty to empower them, to equip them with the necessary skills and knowledge, and to create an environment where they can explore, where they can create, and an environment where they can express themselves in a safe and responsible manner. And for this to happen, it calls for collective response. It calls for the collective responsibility. And I also want to mention that as we discuss Let's bring insights from the works that we do. Let's share experiences. Let's be able to share the initiatives. And these initiatives that we share should be initiatives that promote the rights of the children in the current digital environment. As I conclude, I want to urge all of us to actively participate, to freely engage, to contribute ideas, share the innovations that we have in our different institutions, and let us also take concrete actions that will make a long-lasting impact on the lives of our children. Let it be a webinar discussion that yields results, that contributes positively to the lives of our children. And as we strive for the future for each and every child, let's do this with respect, and let's do this as we celebrate the children, as we protect the children, and this protection and safeguard is both offline and online. And once again, I want to extend my warmest welcome to each one of us, and let us embark on this important journey together, united in our commitment, and this commitment is providing safeguard to the rights of the African child in this digital environment. Again, thank you so much for being part of this, and thank you for listening to me. And I pray that as we continue to engage, at the end of it, we shall come up with recommendations. We shall come up with a document that can be used at a later stage in the area of promoting the rights of the children in this digital world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martha, for those really profound opening remarks. I certainly agree that it's time for us to really reflect on what digital technology can do for our children, but recalling the importance of increasing the protective mechanisms that we can be a fit-for-purpose region in the fourth industrial revolution, and for really calling us to really engage and share experiences in this webinar. Thank you very much, Martha. I'll now hand over again to Jennifer. I understand that the internet has been sorted. Jennifer, you can take the floor now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm sorry about that. Technology always happens when you're talking about it. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go very quickly to the objectives of this conversation. One is to be able to have a conversation on the positive side of technology and how we can leverage technology to improve children's lives, and especially achieve Agenda 2040 on an African Fit for Children. And then to see how can we contribute as CSOs, as government, as African Union, as industry people in the room in ensuring that children are leveraging on these tools. Okay, how can we ensure that they have access to the internet, to ensure that they have access to the devices, ensure that they have access to the knowledge so that they can leverage on these skills. And then number three, give recommendations to the governments in Africa and the African Union on how they can be able to leverage on these tools to make Africa fit for children. So those are the three objectives. At the end of this, we're going to be coming up with a position paper as FAWE and Mtoto News. We're going to be sharing it with the African Union and the African Children's Committee on what needs to be done to leverage on technology to make African fit for children. Thank you very much and welcome. Have fun. I was supposed to tell you about the sign language interpretation on your corner. There's also a French interpretation. So if you're a Francophone, there's French interpretation. Please go to the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and click and choose the language of your choice. Please do ask questions as we go on. So we are supporting Yvonne in collecting the questions, and during the plenary, we are going to be asking those questions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Yvonne. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and for really supporting us with the House issues around interpretation, and also for our other colleagues that I need sign language and also on closed captioning. So thank you very much for that. We note, as mentioned by Martha, that Honorable Member Dr. Robert Doe-Nanima, in his absence, has provided us with a video of his keynote address. And at this moment, we'll ask the technical support team to provide Dr. Nanima's keynote address for this webinar. Technical support, you can go ahead. Thanks.
A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here, and I bring warm greetings from the committee as we get towards the commemoration of the Day of the African Child on the 16th of June. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank FOWEL, I would like to thank Petroleus and all other stakeholders who have had a hand in this great engagement that we are having here today. It's a great honor to be here, and unfortunately I could not join you, but I believe since the theme is about leveraging on digital technology, this is a great locus class on how we can use this specific platform. I think the first question that we should ask ourselves is why the focus on digital rights. And in line with the theme for the year, I think the first answer comes from the statistics that we present on the African continent. The African continent has a population of 1.3 billion people, 1.37 to be exact, and slightly over 590 million of these persons are active internet users. A bigger picture shows that Africa has 21% of its population, according to the 2022 statistics. That means that 590 million of these persons account for 43% of this population. It's also not in doubt that the world's growth in internet usage outside Africa is 68.6%, while in Africa it's 43%. That's an indication that for every 10 persons who are being introduced to internet usage, who are using the internet, 4 are from Africa. In addition, 43% of these internet users have at least a Facebook account, not mentioning Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and other forms of social accounts. The scary part of this narrative is that out of the 590 million persons or people, 400 million of these are children. And research indicates further that when you look at the usage in terms of usage at home, Eastern and Southern Africa accounts for 13%, Western Central Africa accounts for 1%. But when you look at the general narrative of persons below the age of 25 who access internet at home, we have another 5%. So the question still arises, what about outside the home environment, where statistics may not be readily available because children do not come to part of the statistics? These numbers could be higher. So even if we take the median just of the 13% and the 5%, we would still have a large of 9%. 9% of the 400 million, or 9% of the 590 million, accounts for 36 million children. Essentially meaning that if we had followed the 2023 statistics, the estimates show that the 36 million children are about the population of Morocco, or the combined population of about 18 countries in Africa that include Liberia, the Central African Republic, Mauritania, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, to mention but a few. These statistics, ladies and gentlemen, continue asking the very question, why? One, they give the urgency of the child question to be put at the forefront of everything that we are doing. The other why part of the question is also evident in the need to use the internet. The committee acknowledges that internet has provided invaluable opportunities for realization of various rights, as far as it presents new spaces of occupation for children to engage, new spaces of engagement to wider audience, not only for children, but civil society organizations, states, the African Committee of Experts, and other stakeholders. But there are impediments to this why question. One, the lack of access to internet impedes various rights. Rights to education, right to freedom of expression, right to freedom of association, right to play, among others. As we are well aware, when we were still under the COVID-19 pandemic, the lack of access to the internet was a primary challenge. But there are also dangers. The increase in internet usage comes with a bigger risk of children being susceptible to sexual exploitation online, where this includes children being used in pornographic activities, performances, materials, sexual extortion, online grooming, exposure of children to adult pornography, among others. Their right to privacy is greatly compromised on the online environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the adage that children should be protected not only online, but also offline, and the rights that they enjoy offline are also the same rights that they enjoy online. So the relevance of engaging the digital space is important not only to protect them from the violations of their rights, from forms of violence, but also engage the other principles that the committee stands for. The right to participation, the right to life, survival and development, among others. So I have no doubt that this theme comes at a critical age, and the why question is being answered. The other question would be, how can the digital media platforms be effectively utilized to raise awareness about Agenda 2040? Ladies and gentlemen, Agenda 2040 is quite a huge document that will require a lot of dissemination. So the online platforms would help to disseminate this through use of messages, short messages, the use of child-friendly messages as well, such that we are able to latch on the great content of Agenda 2040 and use the online platforms to engage across the digital divide. I think the first step should be to ensure that the celebration on the 16th of June is not simply an event, but a process that culminates from something into something, and we continue the conversation. As a result, it would be good that we contextualize Agenda 2040 beyond 16th June, so that we don't only look at the content, but also using it as an architectural or structural perspective in the various works that we are doing. It should be deliberate in the use of access to the internet and technology devices to ensure that we speak to legal, policy, administrative, and other measures in place to inform the actual granulation of Agenda 2040 in our various perspectives. It would also be a critical pillar and key to reaching out to groups of children who are affected by the digital divide. This will be children in peaceful situations, children who are refugees or internally displaced, as well as children who are affected by armed conflict, tension, and strife. Stakeholders, I call upon you that we become more deliberate to engage issues, question the answers that we have in light of children and the digital environment. I believe step by step, we shall have that Africa that is fit for the child and the child that is fit for Africa. With those few words, I thank you for listening to me, and I wish you very fruitful deliberations. I thank you.
Thank you so much, technical team, and to Honorable Dr. Robert Doyan-Nima for those very important opening remarks, reminding us of the statistics. And we always talk about leveraging or reaping the demographic dividend. And he mentioned in his remarks that for every 10 persons that have used internet, 4 are in Africa. And if we look into our very young population, out of those 4 that use internet, we are most likely to see that 2 out of those 4 are young people. So it's really becoming prudent for us to look into the aspect of leveraging on modern technology and also using social media platforms to widely disseminate Agenda 2040. He also reiterated the importance of ensuring that we advance children's rights and that the lack of access to internet really impedes the advancement of other rights, such as education, the right to play, and the right to information. So we really thank Honorable Nanima for those very useful remarks. I'll now like to call Dr. Musa Chibwana, who is the Regional Humanitarian Policy Advocacy Manager at Save the Children Isaro. And Dr. Musa Chibwana will be really unpacking the current technology landscape in Africa. And when we look ahead, what are the emerging trends or technologies in the digital media landscape that we should foresee a significant impact on achieving Agenda 2040 for children. So without much further ado, I'll give Dr. Musa the floor. You can go ahead, Dr. Musa.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Please may confirm that you can hear me and also that you can see my screen.
Yes, Dr. Musa, we can hear you clearly and we can see your screen. You can go ahead.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much for this opportunity to Faraway and Mtoto News. This is brilliant for us to reflect on the Day of the African Child, like I think Martha also mentioned, as well as Madam Chair Yvonne. It's a day for us to recognize and celebrate the agency of young people on the continent who saw a system that was unjust and they challenged the system. And for some, it costed their lives. And many times on the continent now, we see a lot of injustice happening. I'm wondering, the young people, I think we need to do a lot more, better still, leveraging on the digital technology that is to our disposal. I think one classic example of success of this is some call it the Arab Springs, but if you analyze its origins, I would call it the Africa Spring because it started in Tunisia, went to Egypt, and then spilled over to the Middle East. So that Africa Spring was spearheaded by the young people, and they managed to leverage the digital technology that was to their disposal. But the idea of leveraging, I think in this theme, brings 2 things. First of all, you have to have the technology for you to leverage. You cannot leverage what you do not have. So there is an underlying assumption of access to technology for all. We need to interrogate that aspect in this conversation to say, is this access to technology disposable to all so that we leave no one behind, which is the spirit of Agenda 2063 as well as the SDG agenda. The second aspect I want to highlight about this theme is its reflection on digital technology, not only as a threat, but it takes a libertarian approach. It's not taking a protectionist approach where we're saying, let's protect. But like Martha mentioned, it recognizes that technology is nebulous, both bringing the positive elements that have to be harnessed, which is what this theme is talking about, leveraging the technology, but also having caution to the elements that it brings along. Hence, its emphasis on being a platform for opportunity rather than a threat to development. Having said that, I think I want to echo what Honorable Nanima has mentioned by putting a slide in front of you, which is demonstrating the I think these are the statistics that Honorable Nanima was speaking to say the continent has internet penetration of 43% in 2021. But of course, we have the caveat from Jennifer mentioning that there is an exponential rise in access by more than 400%. But my concern is those who are not covered in the 43%. Hence, my last bullet there indicating that as we celebrate the exponential increase in internet penetration and digital technology access on the continent, we should be wary of digital inequality. Where, for example, during COVID, some of the schools came up with online lessons, and other schools could not provide the same because of this digital inequality that we're speaking to. So as we reflect on leveraging the technology, let's also be wary of the digital inequality of those who are left behind, of those who are not yet having access to it so that they can reap the benefits of it, so that there is balance in the discourse. Otherwise, I think, as has already been mentioned by all the speakers before me, indeed the continent is on a right trajectory in terms of the increase in access to digital technology. But then which comes to my next slide about the normative frameworks, because this space is evolving at a very dynamic pace, but sometimes our normative frameworks are not evolving at the same pace. The African Union, I will not bore you with much details about the substantive content of the instruments that we have on the continent, but I would just want to flag the critical aspects that I've put there. For example, the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection. It has taken 9 years for it to come into force. Look at the year that it was adopted in 2014, but it has not been enforced until the 8th of June this year, a few days ago, when Mauritania submitted its instruments of ratification on the 9th of May. Hence, it took 30 days to take force. So now I think perhaps one of the things we would need to mention within our policy brief or paper is the celebration of the coming into force of this African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection. But with a 9-year deficit, certainly there are a lot of substantive elements within this convention that would need to be revisited. One of the fundamental ones is its great omission of the transnationality of the issue of digital technology and cybersecurity. What do I mean by this? It focuses mainly on national laws, establishment of national institutions in addressing issues of personal security, commerce, and so on, but does not recognize that sometimes the threat comes from ulterior. I think we've seen that on the continent. Some elections have been manipulated remotely by people in Venezuela or elsewhere because of the transnationality of digital technology. I think if we were to lobby for its amendment as we celebrate its coming into force, one of the critical elements that has to be amended is that specific element of making sure that it recognizes transnational violations or opportunities that come with it. Of course, the African Union also is doing a lot of other efforts beyond the convention, such as the Digital Transformation Strategy for Africa 2020 to 2030, the Data Policy Framework of 2022. I think this is an ambition trying to be abreast with the evolving context. We have also the SADC model law, but of 2010, the ECOWAS Supplementary Act of 2010, again, the East African Community Framework for Cyber Laws of 2008. The ambition is there, but the intergovernmental organizations and the regional economic communities are not responsive to the ever-evolving situation. And one of the things that is making the regional bodies to not to be at ease actually is the recent cyber attack that happened to the African Union Commission actually about a month ago. And when this occurred, the Peace and Security Council of the African Union had a session on the 13th of April. And reading through this communique of the Peace and Security Council responding to the cyber attack that had happened to the Commission, one could get a sense of agitation that the African Union is not ready, has been found lethargic in responding to the issue of digital technology. And I've put there some of the language that is in the communique, where the Peace and Security Council is stressing the need for effective internet governance as a matter of urgency, which means it has not been the case. There has not been urgency. The second bullet there says encourages member states to develop national cybersecurity strategies. Some of our member states have not yet come up with such national cybersecurity strategies, which means we're lagging behind. But the last point I want to mention around legislating the digital technology on the continent, I'm happy that we are in this conversation, we are reflecting on it, we're conceptualizing it as an opportunity rather than a threat. But for the greater part, engage with the issue of digital technology from a threat, from a security point of view. This is what I'm calling the assumption of competence folly, where we are assuming that our parliamentarians know the right questions to ask, our legislators know the right language to use when they are drafting the laws. I think this is problematic because you then find that some of the laws that are being promulgated are not addressing some of the emerging issues. For example, I gave you the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Data Protection, which does not recognize transnationality of digital technology, a fundamental issue because of our assumption that the legislators or those who have authority in regulating the digital technology have the expertise. I think this has been witnessed even globally, the issue of assumption of competence of those in authority. For example, recently, Shou Chu, the CEO of TikTok, went to the US Congress for questioning. I think the motivation was all right because some of the issues that they were concerned about was the protection of children online. But you could hear some of the questions that were being asked that there is a limited understanding of the subject matter in this regard. But my trepidation in all this is that the African Union has not taken the initiative to engage with these private companies on their operations on the continent. Why are we always reactive? The European Union has recently fined Facebook parent company Meta 1.2 billion euro for breaching the privacy laws. I have a feeling if we just do a snapshot reading of that judgment, the African Union or ourselves on the continent, we can borrow one or two leaves and do the same to Facebook. I think that's an opportunity that is at our disposal that we're not using, how we can litigate with these companies. I know there are some colleagues from there, but on this call. But my ambition is to see the African Union and regional economic communities and civil society taking the initiative, litigating on these issues or on private companies that may breach some of these laws. Even Google has gone before Congress and all these international companies. And yet on the African continent, where the growth rate is at more than 400%, we have not yet engaged with them in an effective manner. I think that's a concern that we might need to raise within our paper. Before my last slide, I think I raised the 9 critical areas that we need to reflect on as we go forward, as we think about responding to the digital technology and leveraging it, especially for young people as digital citizens on this on this platform. The first one is the digital law. The questions are, do the authorities know how to regulate this space adequately? I think we've seen already that sometimes there is assumption of competence, which makes them come up with laws that are not adequate. So perhaps in collaboration, like Martha suggested, in collaboration with these private companies, we might need to build the capacity of our legislatures on the continent around this particular subject. The second question around digital law is, do our children know how to use and share digital content legally? Because there are some laws, for example, in South Africa, where if you share somebody's images online without their consent, it's a criminal offense. Do children then know these laws? It is now the prerogative of civil society to assist children in orienting them to understand some of these things. And digital literacy, that's the second pillar of the questions I'm asking. Do children know how to use the various digital technologies and how to assess the legitimacy of information in this era of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, as you call it? Do children know what is misinformation and disinformation, or do we all know what is the difference? I think that's an opportunity also that we can use to engage with young people in making sure that they verify the legitimacy of information that they encounter online. Because not everything that is online is true. Not everything that is online is legitimate. Digital communication pillar. Do children understand what is appropriate to share on their various digital platforms? Honorable Nanimo was talking about the presence of children on Facebook and various other social media platforms. Sometimes children post content that makes them to be prone to cyberbullying. There is need for them to be oriented on these aspects, because the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child from Article 18, 19, and 20, it's talking about parental responsibilities towards the realization of children's rights. But it's difficult for a parent to have responsibilities in an area that they need orientation in, that they need also to be taught in. So I think a whole society approach in addressing this issue is necessary. And the issue of digital commerce, are children aware of the dangers and benefits of buying and selling online? Recently, my son was playing with my phone and was playing a game. And later on, my account was deducted 1,000 rand because he bought these games online and they popped up when he was playing this other one and it popped up. I think it's an opportunity already for us to start thinking about young people and how they can make sure that they do not fall for the dangers of buying and selling online. In this case, I think I was the victim, because for him, he got the games that he wanted. And the issue of digital etiquette, sometimes children are perpetrators of cyberbullying. Do they know when to use technology appropriately and in a positive manner? This is an opportunity for us to make sure that the curriculum is embedded with content that helps young people to be able to have decorum in their engagement online. Digital rights and responsibilities. It is important to remind the children and young people that beyond having rights, there are responsibilities that come with it, and they can as well be violators of these rights. I think my brother Willie Blosso would speak eloquently to this issue. And the issue of digital health. Our children are aware of the physical and the psychological risks of internet usage. I think we have to, when you are selling this opportunity to them, we need also to highlight these cautions. And the last question there on digital security. Our children are aware of how to be safe online through various virus protection, strong passwords, backing up data, the risk of identity theft, and so on. The last aspect is digital access, which was the first point I mentioned. Are all the children online? When we're talking about leveraging, you can only leverage what you have. Which children are being left behind? We have to do this analysis to make sure that all those children also are being left behind, are brought on board. Let me conclude by answering maybe one of the questions. How can we prepare for this exponential increase in technology access on the continent? Over and above the questions that I've provided, some of which are prognostic in trying to answer on how we can prepare. Perhaps let's start by providing an impeccable legislative frameworks, which can learn from other jurisdictions. I've given an example of the European Union and how they have come up with the legislative framework, which is able to hold private companies to account. There are few countries on the continent that have come up with similar legislations that are able to hold private companies to account, especially those who may be operating from beyond the borders, but have a lot of impact on what is happening within our jurisdictions. The second aspect is, let's revisit our education curriculum for it to be adaptive and to orient children as digital citizens that have decorum, and highlighting the risks that come with it, the opportunities that they can leverage on to be able to make the best use of it. But it should not be this approach should not only focus on children. It should also focus on the teachers, the parents, like I mentioned, a whole society approach in addressing these issues. That's how we can prepare. The third aspect I've mentioned here is children. Let's educate children about their digital rights and responsibilities as we give them gadgets, as we make access available to them, especially those that are left behind. There is a responsibility that comes with that digital right, which is linked also to the fourth point here about equitable digital access. Let's make sure that no child is left behind. If you go the graph that the map that I showed you, mainly countries that are in conflict or that have experienced conflict are those where there is less digital access. I think it's one of those things that we have to reflect on, because the governance institutions have conceptualized it as a threat where young people can be radicalized. So if there is any grumbling amongst citizens, one of the things which dictatorial leaders do is to target this aspect. So we need to make sure that this right is held in the highest of all esteem and is sacrosanct, that it's not violated. But it's one of the first casualties when there are protests within a country, because there is always that security lens that is used to view this right. And fifth, as Martha mentioned in a conclusion, collaboration with the private sector. These are the people who are inventing some of the technology we are discussing here, and yet we want to legislate it, or we want to discuss it without them. I commend the organizers for this meeting, because you brought those people on board. We need to strengthen the collaboration between private sector, and also they need to be reminded of their responsibility to the children, their responsibility to communities, and in making sure that the young people are aware of the dangers that come through the online technology, which means the corporate social responsibility of such companies should specifically be targeting a whole society approach instead of just supporting sporting events. I think there is a need to supporting initiatives that help in leveraging their technology to achieve greater results. Otherwise, the last thing that I recommend is for us to respond with urgency, with the right people leading in our institutions. Sometimes people are given leadership within government for loyalty rather than competence. There is need to make sure that we have the right people leading from the front in the response to leveraging the technology, in legislating the use of this technology on our continent. I think this is where I end. Thank you for your attention. I hope to hear from the other colleagues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Musa, for that thought-provoking presentation, really reflecting on the current existing normative frameworks in Africa, but really highlighting the concern that what we have as legislative and policy framework are really not evolving at the pace at which technology is. But also what I really appreciated was your reflection on the assumption of competence of authorities, really having that general assumption that those in authority have the necessary skills to protect children or to investigate crimes that are related to technology. And you really also touched upon the 9 critical elements that would really help on digital citizenship. And I think as a region, if we can extrapolate some key programs and within an overarching legislative framework to successfully and constantly address these 9 critical elements, we can safely say that we will be contributing to the achievement of Agenda 2040 for children. But what was also really key was the role of the private sector to go beyond corporate social responsibility and look into a whole of society approach where they also put in place the necessary safeguards to both accelerate access to technology for all children, but also ensuring protective mechanisms. And based on that strand of thought, we are now moving on to a panel discussion with some of the private sector colleagues that work in the digital sphere in Africa. And this panel will be discussing on how we can leverage on the digital technology for us as a region to achieve Agenda 2040 for children, to have an Africa that is fit for children based on the reflections that we just heard from Dr. Chibwana. So on the panel, colleagues, I have Mr. Selemani Kanyunyu from Microsoft, and also Caroline Bugwa from GSMA. We also have a friend and a colleague, Willie Baluso, who's with ECPAT, and ECPAT is a non-government organization that has really been working around sexual exploitation within the digital sphere. And Selemani Kanyunyu is the government affair lead and head of safety at Microsoft East Africa, while Caroline Bugwa is the HSC director for public policy in sub-Saharan Africa. And Willie Buluso is the regional coordinator for Africa at ECPAT International. So this panel, we are going to be posing a few questions for them, and we'll then provide them an opportunity to reflect on these questions. And then in plenary, we can also engage with them based on their reflections. So I'm going to start with Seleman, just to really ask him, as Microsoft East Africa, what opportunities does technology provide for children as we work towards achieving Agenda 2040? So maybe you can just provide your reflections on what opportunities that technology provides when we are really talking about an Africa fit for children. You have the floor.
Thank you, Yvonne. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, Suleiman. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers for organizing, I think, this event on the eve of the Day of the African Child. We as Microsoft really appreciate the invitation and are happy that we are in this space to get to have a conversation with many of the actors that are at the forefront of leading child rights movement on the continent. I think just first as a preface to say that with over 5 billion people using the internet, our personal and professional lives have become connected to the digital world. I think this is something that we saw increasingly being relevant at the height of the COVID pandemic on the continent. In our own data, our 2023 Global Online Survey found that 69% of people had experienced some form of online risk in the last year. And of those surveyed, 74% of teens reported and experienced online risk. So increasingly, as we spend more time of our lives online, we're also noting that there's need for adequate guardrails and safeguards to be put in place. And really, I think when it comes to children in particular, there are 4 broad areas I think aligned to Agenda 2040 that are relevant and worth considering. I think the first is around education. We're seeing technology and technology tools being deployed increasingly in schools and in learning. And I think that's one both opportunity, but another area that may be worth considering in terms of ensuring we provide a safe space for children online. I think the second thing is around Africa's huge demographic dividend when it comes to skilling for the sort of jobs and skilling for the sort of opportunities that the world is presenting today. So we're increasingly in an online space. Technology is increasingly being integrated into our lives. And, young people and children these days are being born in many parts of the world, having access to technology and technology platforms that are going to shape how we interact with everything from agriculture to education to science and technology. And really, what sort of skills are we equipping our young people and children with to enable them to thrive in a world that is increasingly digital first? I think the third area I think that may be interesting is around how we use technology to ensure we safeguard the rights of children, particularly children on the African continent, when it comes to issues such as recognition of their status as children, recognition of birth of young people and children. And this includes issues around formulating digital identities and how we incorporate technology into how we identify and manage our data that's available publicly. And I think finally, fourth issue that's worth considering is how we can leverage technology as a platform to amplify the voices of children and young people. So a lot of young people increasingly are spending their time online. They share a lot of their thoughts, reflections, and these help shape societal attitudes and values. So how do we use the technology ecosystem as a whole as a space to get to hear from young people about what their concerns are, what their ambitions are, and then how can we use technology to be able to shape public policy and to shape our governance systems to be able to create responsive frameworks for children to be able to thrive. So I think with those 4 broad issues, those are some worth considering, but happy to continue the conversation subsequently. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Suleiman, for those reflections. So quickly move on to Caroline. Caroline is from GSMA, and the questions for Caroline is, how is the mobile operator community supporting children's access to the digital environment? And then the second question is, how can digital media platforms be harnessed to bridge the information gap and ensure that children across Africa have access to vital information and resources related to their rights and well-being? So Caroline, you can perhaps reflect on those 2 questions as a mobile operator in Africa. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for that, Yvonne, and good afternoon to everyone. I just want to check that you can all hear me.
Yes, loud and clear, and we can see you as well.
Thank you. I think I want to first congratulate the organizers of this event for setting this up, because it's a very critical discussion to have, particularly because children themselves rely on us, the grown-ups, to be able to make some of these decisions on their behalf, and we just need to make sure that the decisions are made, in line with their interests. So I see there's a hand that is up. Is that for me or is it for someone else?
Thanks, Caroline. Yes, I think there have been a couple of hands that are up. I think we can deal with them at plenary. Maybe before you present, Grace Areba, your hand is up as an attendee. And then I think we also have a panelist whose hand is up. Let me just check. Yes, Grace, your hand is up. You have the floor before Caroline presents.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Areba. I am deaf, and I'm a girl with a disability. I have a question. How is technology being inclusive to children with disability, and especially the deaf children? For example, I can give an example for a child who is coming from a poor background. Maybe does not know how to access the technology. They don't know whether there's technology. How then are we inclusive in providing that? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace Areba, for that very important question. I agree that we really need to ensure that there's inclusivity when we talk about access to modern technology. So with your indulgence, may I request that we then respond to your question during plenary? I promise you it will be the first question that we'll give our panelists to answer. Then we will just ask Caroline and Willie to finalize their presentations, and then we can then respond to your questions with your indulgence. Thanks, Grace. I've taken note of your question and we'll get back to it. So, Caroline, you have the floor, and if possible, you can also just reflect on the inclusivity as is really highlighted, because it also speaks into the rights of children within Agenda 2040. So, Caroline, you can continue. And once again, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And so if I can just make my comments really quick around the questions you've asked. So what is a mobile community doing to support the access, of children's access to the digital environment? And I think even before I respond to that question, I'd like us to take a step back and understand what is the state of connectivity. And I like some of the presentations that have been done before around that, trying to paint a picture of how connectivity is doing in the region. So for us at the GSMA, when we look at state of connectivity in Sub-Saharan Africa region, we see a situation where the adoption of broadband services is not keeping up with the rollout of the services. So in Africa, for instance, there's a usage gap of 61%. The usage gap here represents customers that are covered by broadband services but are not using the service. So we have a usage gap of 61%, and globally the usage gap is 40%. So you can see that Sub-Saharan Africa at least is, not doing so well when it comes to adoption of service. And of course, also we also have a challenge around gender gap, because when you drill down a bit further, it's good to understand what are some of these vulnerable groups and how are we doing in terms of connectivity. And in Sub-Saharan Africa, and these are statistics as at 2021, gender gap is 36%, and then even drilling a bit further, rural gap is 54%. And the importance for us to do this is when you look at a lot of our countries in the region, the majority of the population, more than half of the population, is usually women, and a good percentage of the population, in most places, more than 70% the population is in the rural areas. So then it's good to understand if that's the situation, because a lot of the times the children will go online based on guidance from their parents or ability of their parents to actually be able to support them to go online. So the higher the level of the usage gap, it means that we have a lot more children that are the risk of being left behind or not being able to go online. And the same applies to the issue around the gender gap and the rural gap. Then we say, so what needs to be done to address this? How do we make sure that we get as many people as possible online and ensure that children also go online? Because we also say that Africa has a youthful population. If you look at the country like Niger, for instance, Niger's median age is 15, meaning that the majority of their population is not even 18 years. Yeah. So if you have such a high usage gap in the country, it means majority of the children in that country are actually not able to access internet services. So then it's important for us to have a concentrated effort, deliberate effort to ensuring that
the issues the main barriers that impact broadband adoption are addressed. So issues around affordability of service, affordability of smart devices is critical. Like programs like issuing smart devices in a community level is one that is critical to be done to make sure that children actually have access to, can be able to go online. Digital literacy is also critical. There needs to be particular lessons in the school curriculum that is focused on digital literacy for children. Over and above, we're getting skills like literacy skills for school and other subjects. Is critical for there to be a specific program that is run to address digital literacy in schools. And of course, also content. There's a lot of content that is available online, but I believe there's a lot of effort that needs to be done to, one, make the content relevant and in the right languages for Africa, and also to create that awareness that there's that content that exists. So, for instance, content around education tools, there's a lot that needs to be done. And we also need to appreciate that for children to go online, they need to be facilitated by an adult or by their guardian. So the guardian needs to already have some sort of knowledge and understanding of the benefits of internet so that they can be able to encourage their child to go online. So issues around digital literacy are one that needs to be addressed from a parental point of view, a guardian point of view, a parent point of view. So anybody that would interact with the children and is able to influence this child's ability to go online need to already have the necessary skills and capability to go online. And then, of course, so this also speaks to issues around equitable access between men, girls, and women. And there are very many initiatives that a lot of organizations in the region, particularly mobile operators, are doing around having like a Women in Technology initiative, because such initiatives now get to encourage women and girls to be able to get into the online space and also to participate in the technical subjects, technical sessions, so ICT and all, because for the longest time possible, this has been assumed to be an area that is only focused for men. And of course, if you look at how some of the mobile operators have positioned themselves in the region, we have Airtel Africa and UNICEF that announced in 2021 that they will be having a 5-year Pan-African partnership to help accelerate the rollout of digital learning through connecting schools to the internet. So that's one of the things that mobile operators are doing, looking at making sure schools are connected. And this is something that is also being done through the Universal Service Fund. That is normally the majority of the contributors and mobile operators, and it's run by regulators. So having these funds and having schools prioritized for connectivity is critical in ensuring that children have access to the digital environment. And of course, also looking at how other operators are launching education systems. So this we have seen with MTN, Vodacom, Safaricom, Airtel again, where you go to specific parts of their websites and you can be able to access information about the digital space. So how to go online, how to be able to access helpful information, and so on and so forth. Granted that this is helpful, but there's still a lot more awareness that needs to be done at a national level to be able to bring attention to such sites, such information that can be helpful for children as they are interacting with the online space. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to say is that there's a lot of benefit with connectivity. There's a lot of benefit with going online. We just need to be able to strike that balance between the benefits and being able to respond to the challenges that may come online. And at the GSMA, we believe that awareness is your first line of defense, making sure that the children and the guardians are aware that as much as there's positivity online, there are also challenges, but they can be addressed. We can be able to overcome them, because we should not be able to shy away from engaging online because of the challenges, because they can be addressed. And I know that a lot of mobile operators have started to set up like parental control kind of solutions where you can be able to now control, the kind of sites that your child is able to access, the duration the child is able to access to avoid things like internet addiction and gaming addiction, to be able to monitor in a way and be able to guide this child on what content is considered okay and what is not. Because again, if you leave the child to this space without any form of guidance, there can be a big challenge with that. So looking at the Internet Watch Foundation, for instance, is one that does a really good job of bringing down sexual exploitation kind of content online, and a lot of mobile operators, so Safaricom, MTN, have become members of the Internet Watch Foundation, and they are able to actually benefit from this information from them. If I can move on to the next question, where we are talking about how can digital media platform be harnessed to bridge the information gap and ensure that children across Africa have access to vital information and resources relating to their rights and well-being. Again, speaking to what I have just mentioned, there are good case studies that we have seen. So, for instance, Safaricom and UNICEF have a partnership that they're calling, Internet for Good, Internet of Good Things. So, providing that information, providing that place where children can go online to understand where is the source of information that can be used to increase your knowledge gap and to address vulnerabilities that different people may be having when going online, So we are seeing operators coming together and partnering with like-minded organizations to put this information out there. We saw during COVID-19, for instance, UNICEF did a direct contact to children and the young people. I think the program was dubbed Get It a Shot Challenge, where they were aiming to interact with the young people to be able to now encourage and mobilize people to get vaccinated, to increase the level of vaccination in the region. So that's also a really good example of how, I think the main thing is to involve children in the decision making around how they want to interact with the online space, and then providing this information in places that they can be able to access in simplified languages for them to know what they can be able to access and how, because we've seen how technology has revolutionized a lot of things. And at the GSMA, we also have a pilot that you're doing with UNICEF and Vodacom, where we'll be looking into, in the next couple of months, that will showcase the potential of connectivity to enable young people to raise awareness of issues of importance to them. So also providing sessions or places or platforms where now children can come together with the owners of these platforms and be able to voice some of their concerns, be able to share their experiences is critical, so that now there is that feedback mechanism when developing these platforms, and to ensure that they are safe and actually derive value for the children. So in a nutshell, what you're saying is that the information is out there. We need to first ensure that there's enough that children are able to go online, but by reducing or removing broadband adoption barriers. And also over and above that is increasing awareness to the children on the benefits of going online, and also being aware that even as you go online, similar to the offline environment, there are challenges. If your child is moving from your house to school, it's a good thing, but there are all these challenges that they can meet along the way. So it's the same kind of scenario. When you go online, it doesn't mean that you no longer need the rules of offline don't apply. They should apply. And that's the thing that we just need to train all the stakeholders involved, because it has to be a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to address these things. I'll stop there, and I will hand it over to you, Yvonne, and I'm happy to interact a bit more during the plenary session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and appreciate that you raised that awareness is the first line of defense within the broader area of the Internet of Good Things, and just how you've showcased some of the good work that private sector is doing in advancement to the protection and also the using of technology to revolutionize children's rights in the region. So I'll quickly go over to Willie Buluso from ECWAD, and Willie is going to reflect on what are the best ways to address technology-facilitated child sexual exploitation and abuse in the face of the current digital technology. So Willie, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you very much, Yvonne. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm just going to take 2 to 3 minutes to reflect on the question. Yvonne, do you allow me to share my screen? I have 2 slides.
Yes, sure, Willie. You can share your slides. Thanks.
Okay. Can you see it?
It hasn't come through yet. I think, yes, we can see it. Perhaps you can put it in presentation mode and we'll be good to go.
We need this one, like this?
I think you can put on the, yes, perfect.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So I'm going I like what Martha said at the beginning of this meeting when she said that children need technology, but at the same time, they need to be protected sometimes against some kind of organized crime through technology. And my very short presentation will be based on our research study we did called Disrupting Harm Project. And I'm just sharing with you some of the key findings, and then I will reflect on how, while giving access to internet to our children, we can at the same time protect them. And as you can see, speaking about online child sexual exploitation and abuse, you will see that 30% of children did not tell anyone when they were victims of online child sexual exploitation. And when they tried to report, you will see that 40% they report or they inform their friends, a friend, another teenager who is not in any way, does not have any possibility to help them. And then you can see that very few cases were reported to the police or helpline. Only 3% to helplines, 2% to the police. So this is the key findings coming from our study, Disrupting Harm. So in responding to the questions, Ivan, I would like to say that this discussion about Agenda 2014 and specifically on issues related to online child sexual exploitation, it is linked to number 7, where they said every child is protected against violence, sexual exploitation, and abuse. So from our perspective as a organization, we have some recommendation on how we can protect our children while they have access to internet. And the first one, as you can see here, we need to inform children about their right to be protected and how to stay safe while they are online. So we need to inform how they can seek help, where and who can be involved in their request to have help while they are online. That is our recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2, it's about hotline and helpline. As I said, the key findings of our research say that only 2% of cases of online child sexual exploitation are reported to hotline. So we need to increase awareness raising efforts about hotline and helpline, including by providing adequate resources and training of all officers who are working at national level on hotline and helpline platforms. And the last one key recommendation is about training. And I think Musa said it during his presentation. We need training on issues related to online child sexual exploitation, specifically for law enforcement agents, judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and courtroom staff, child protection officers, and frontline people who are working on issues related to online child sexual exploitation. So those are, according to me, the 3 recommendations, which I will be ready to respond in case you have any questions during the plenary. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I think we lost Yvonne. So our next session, I think she's back. Welcome back, Yvonne. And you can go on. Willie has just finished.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. Apologies, colleagues. We've just had load shedding. Thank you so much, Willie, for your presentation and for really unpacking some of the very disturbing findings from the Disrupting Harm study that ECPAT International presented, and we're going to open more for discussions during the panel, the plenary. we've really heard from Caroline and Willie and Selemani about some of the ways we could leverage on digital technology to achieve the aspirations that are postulated in Agenda 2040 for Children, with Selemani talking about how we could use technology for skilling for job opportunities, also using it for access to rights such as birth registration and ensuring that there's identity. And Caroline also spoke about the importance of awareness raising, and really also talking about the importance of really providing protective environment. We also talked about the needs of us really putting children at the forefront for us to hear their voices. And this has been a clarion call from Martha, and it was also raised by Dr. Musa on the importance of us realizing that we need to engage children. And Caroline Bugwa has also raised the importance of engaging children meaningfully and strategically in these conversations. And around the importance of child participation, children also need to understand that they do have a responsibility to protect themselves and others as they use and access technology. So without taking much time, this is now a very important moment for us to hear from children and young people on their own perspectives of how we can leverage on the digital technology. As we've heard, 1-year-olds are actually now accessing YouTube, social media. They even before reading and writing, they are somehow technologically savvy and can even pay for games, as we've heard previously. And it will be important for us to hear from the children themselves on how we can really ensure that we are giving them the right spaces to use digital technology and how we can protect them. So I'm going to give Brian King and Daisy Njoroge the floor for them to just really talk about the ways in which digital media can be used to promote and amplify the voices of children in shaping the implementation of Agenda 2040. So we'll start with Brian, and then we'll then end up with Daisy's reflections before we then end the plenary discussion, the panel discussions. So Brian, you have the floor.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, we're just like sorting out a technical difficulty for 1 minute, then I'll be back.
Yes, sure, Brian, we can hear you. Hi, Brian. Are you facing challenges?
Okay. All right. My phone. Oh, there. All right. Sorry, guys. We're experiencing some just a bit of technical difficulty. But yes, my name is Brand King. I'm a young person from Kenya, a trained journalist by Mteto News, and I'll be speaking on leveraging technology to influence children and to actually implement Agenda 2040, right? And I have been following the conversation quite literally and enjoying the conversation, listening to some of the challenges that you people face. But I want to change the tone a bit and actually just talk about exactly how the online world, basically the digital world, is more of an opportunity than a challenge for the young people. Because as much as there are all these difficulties that we face in the online world, the truth is it's not a possibility anymore to take young people away from, the digital world, you know? So I think it is very important for us to actually look to ways to actually turn every form of idea, every form of way to implement Agenda 2040 into an opportunity, because the current generation, my generation and the generation that is coming even after us, is very hungry. It's very hungry for opportunity. So I guess the best way to implement this, the best way to influence the implementation of Agenda 2040 is to turn it into an opportunity, to find a way to turn Agenda 2040 into an opportunity for young people, you know, finding ways to actually change the narrative from this is very bad to we can make this very good. You know, and I think this is actually the right moment to just introduce you to an app that Mteto News is launching pretty soon called Easy. Easyway. It's a nice word that means our voice, basically, or my voice. And this app it's an interactive interface. It's everything combined into one. A place where young people, children. Let me not use young people, but instead use children, where children can actually interact, can share ideas, can create opportunities, can find ways to basically live your life, but in the digital world. I want to share some things, but we need this. Okay, great. So as I was telling you guys, the best ways for us to actually, implement and leverage to promote and amplify Agenda 2040 is to turn it into an opportunity. But it would not be really useful for me to tell you guys that without actually sharing ways that you can do that. So I just want to share a few ways that I have found that very useful and very critical to actually influence children, not just in the implementation of Agenda 2040, but we're looking at other agendas as well. Like, for example, in the Agenda 2040, we can look at the ways that we can turn the SDGs into opportunities. Not just, when I'm saying opportunities, I'm not just saying opportunities in itself as a word. I'm saying ways to actually benefit these young people, because as I understand this, the current generation is not interested in doing something that is not going to be beneficial to them one way or another. I mean, even as we're talking about climate change and other issues, as long as it's just something to do, it doesn't impact the lives of these young people. It doesn't change it. It doesn't influence it for a positive better. It's just words and documents and policies that are never going to be implemented, at least not by the young people. So yes, I'm going to be sharing a few ways in which we can actually turn these policies, these words that we are speaking, these policies, these words, these campaigns, all of nothings into something useful that can actually be implemented, that can actually take action to basically grow from words into actions. And number one, I believe the best way to do this is through online platforms, to create dedicated online platforms and websites where children can contribute their ideas, opinions, and suggestions related to Agenda 2040. To elaborate on this, I would like you to actually just take an example. Visit our website right now, Mteto News website. It's www.mtetonews.com. It's a simple website, very colorful, very beautiful. Just your average run-of-the-mill website. You'd not expect anything different from it. But when you enter the website, you're able to explore content produced by children, not cartoons. Important content, children talking about important issues. You're able to access documents. You have an outcome statement there. I think the most important outcome statement for African children right now, the one that just happened of the African Children Summit, you're able to explore that. It was written by children. You're able to explore the dialogue that was conducted between the children. These are just some of the ways. Actually, this is just one of the ways that you can actually make your website more interactive. I said here that we want to create a very dedicated online platform and website where children can contribute the ideas. Now, how do these children how can they be able to reach institutions like ASWEC, AU, UN? How can they be able to reach you, in usual websites, when you just enter them, you'll find something like a chatbot, a way for you to interact and report problems. But I think we need to eliminate this, or maybe not eliminate, but make an add-on. I have for children to actually reach out and share their suggestions and ideas. Wikipedia, I know most of you have interacted with Wikipedia. But I know when you explore Wikipedia and when you're reading through something and you see something is wrong or there's an addition that can be added, you can change it and you can alter a suggestion to it. I think we need to find ways to do this for important documents like the UNCRC, documents like the SCRC, right? We need to find ways to actually turn child participation into something that is so direct that every single child who has access to technology can be able to alter this, can be able to interact with it, because I believe interaction is more engaging, changing, and curating rather than just saying and reading. I think we need to find ways to do this. I don't want to say a lot, but I also believe that as a journalist, multimedia content creation is very important. I want to talk about this. It might not be relevant for you if you're not into media, but it is very relevant for everyone else here. Because here's the thing. When it comes to children content, the world is vast. For us, the internet is an opportunity for us to become famous, for us to make money, for us to find ideas, for us to share ideas, for us to connect with our friends, to make our networks. Most of you guys relied on events and etc. to make connections. We rely on the internet, And so when it comes to the content we consume on the internet, we need to find ways of changing the narrative that for children, it's just entertainment. No. The work of a child is to play, but we can also find ways to turn the content that children are consuming into something that is very important. For example, the SDGs. I find it very weird that we are not animating SDGs, that we are not finding our work plans and workshops and games that are all focused on SDGs to just share with the children. The SDGs are very important. They are very simple as well, but we don't find ways of sharing it. So basically, my takeaway for this, my key point would be changing the narrative, basically. Turning it from the simple read and see and enjoy and give the feedback to more of engaging, interacting, curating, and editing, I believe editing has enough power because you cannot edit something you haven't gone through. So we need to give children the power to create their own media. We need to give children the power of the media, basically. That would be my key takeaway of the day. And I would love to pass it over to the next speaker of the day. That is my colleague and my friend.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Everything that Brian King has said is really beneficial because he's speaking for the children and he's projecting the voice for other children out there and wherever they would want for them to be heard concerning the digital media space. And he has talked about a lot of things, making the media user-friendly for the kids, technically. And everything that he has reflected on is what me as a child and everyone else as children can want. Because he has said that we have these spaces where we go just have fun to create content. But as a child, I would want my content to also help another child out there, not just to play, have fun, and watch. It should be a content that should help other children out there. And he has talked about some of the things, like the multimedia spaces, the multimedia creation of content. And me will talk about the collaboration with influencers and mentors. When we have role models out there who create content that we find interactive with us and that can help us, if we get these content creators that can help us in whatever we are doing and direct us, be our role models in this creation of content, it will be so beneficial to us as children when you have someone who can take us through, who can explain to us everything that we'll need to know. Because despite we say the media is not a really safe space for children, I support the fact that it is a safe space for children. For me as a child, when I go to that space and
I have the chance to interact with the media, I come across a lot of things and a lot of information that I never knew about. One being the press release that we had for the African Children's Summit. It's a voice for the children all over Africa. We got to speak our issues and bring solutions by ourselves. And the solutions that the children had, if they are put to action, they could be seen to be more of beneficial, because the child will have that feeling of they're able to reflect on it from a point of they spoke on their own and they said their own issues and whatever they want to be done, because they give out the problems that they are going through and got the solutions on their own. And if they get to be implemented, it makes a safe space for them as children. We have the youth-driven content channels. When we support the creation of youth-driven content channels or platforms that allow children to produce and share content related to the Agenda 2040, this will be of much of a bigger space, because as Mtoto News here, we have podcasts that get to interact with children and they speak on their own. So in such media platforms, we have a bigger space of where, as children, we get to speak for ourselves. And if we get hearing people who can help us and work with us, I believe it will be a bigger space for us as children, and everything that we have ever wanted for the media to be made what we want it to be. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're done with that. Just to summarize, though, I think it's very important for us to remember that the Agenda 2040 in itself is a beautiful document, though it's very wordy and it's very long. We should look for ways to turn it into something simpler and maybe break it down. Break it down and put it out there for children. Let them break it down in their own self. Let them create ideas based on the Agenda 2040, based on the SDGs, on the NPS as well. Just to break it down as well. Open it up for children and create a platform for them. Yeah, and follow our example at Mtoto News. Sending our technologies, our websites, our apps, everything is beautiful for us, basically.
Thank you so much, Daisy and Brian, and certainly agree with you about making Agenda 2040 and SDGs child-friendly and accessible to young people. And thank you so much for reflecting on some innovative apps such as Izwe, which is really a Bantu word for voice, and how it can be used by young people across the region to share information, and really calling on us adults to really see technology as an opportunity for you to be able to advance your rights, and that it's important for us to be able to ensure that we give spaces to design, reiterate, iterate, and co-create ideas. But also you raised something very interesting, and something that is coming up a lot is the issue of collaborating with social media influencers, something that we as adults are still going to learn about. So thank you very much for those very important reflections on the importance of partnerships, simplification of information, and innovation. So well done, Brian and Daisy, for those reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving quite well with our program. I can see the comments in the chat box. We are almost getting into the plenary for us to engage more on this important subject. But before we head on to the plenary session, it is my singular honor to really invite Naima Mungai, who will be talking about keeping children safe online. Maria Mungai is the program manager at African Women Journalism Project in Kenya. and she'll be reflecting on what the role of the media is in terms of information literacy, particularly in creating safe spaces for children online. So we've been hearing across this afternoon that there's importance of awareness raising, appropriate to age-appropriate information, access to age-appropriate information. But how does that actually look like in reality when we talk about creating safe spaces for children online? So Naima Mungai, you have the floor for your reflections on this aspect of keeping children safe.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here. It was very interesting listening to everybody who has spoken before me. One of the things that we do is we are based in Nairobi, but we work primarily with women journalists across Africa. And we work around centering women and minority groups and underrepresented groups and underserved groups, and children sort of tend to be part of that group. So I know a lot of people have talked about digital literacy, and the term that we like to use is media information literacy. And for us, one of the biggest problems was realizing that we couldn't create, women could not interact in the online spaces because they were not safe. A lot of the things that young people are also, pushed towards, a lot of, the risks that they have, a lot of what we call our minority groups, women, journalists, activists do have that. And there's been a very strong push over the past couple of years to try and see what it is that we can do to make sure that, those things are, I'm sorry, my puppy is back here making noise. Hagrid, go away. Working from home stories, sorry. Anyway, so one of the things that we found out is that a lot of people do not understand media, what we call media information literacy. And I know people have called it digital literacy, but I love to use the word media information literacy. And this breaks down what media is, what media does, what are the reasons for media, and all of that thing. And the reason for this is we don't own our own platforms. All of us are on separate, specific platforms that are owned by other people. And if you don't understand what this platform is about, what this media is about, what risks are there, why is this person posting these specific things, you then cannot protect yourselves. You can't figure out how to navigate those spaces. And I think the Q&A, someone has asked that question. So to preface that, there is the idea that we want our children to be tech savvy. We want them to understand how to use media, but we don't know how to use it. We ourselves as parents don't know how to use it. As elders, we don't know how to use it. And so it becomes very difficult for us to teach other children and our younger people about how to keep themselves safe online. If I was to sit down and ask all of you, like a simple question, how many of you do any sort of digital hygiene work every 6 months? How many of you know which of your passwords have been broken down? How many of you have two-factor authentication on your devices? How many of you can look at something and see that someone is grooming you, or someone is selling misinformation, or someone is trolling you? And if you don't know that, it means that your children don't know that. And that is a very big sort of problem. And so if I can actually quickly just share my screen for 2 seconds, is that okay?
Yes, sure, Naima, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Let me do that. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this very quickly. So what media and information literacy is about, oh, hold on, sorry, I haven't shared it. Very sorry about that. I don't know if everybody can see it now. Okay, so what media information literacy is about is the ability to fully use different types of media. And the skill sets that go into media information literacy allows people to interact positively and effectively with media. So you can access media, you can analyze media content, you can create new media messages, you're able to reflect on existing media content, and you can take action with the media. And this is very important because our lives right now are so very intertwined. If you think about it, it was first, the radio, and then, I think the newspapers, and then the radio, and then television. And now we have, social media, which is so many different things. So if people don't know how to work in those spaces and how to navigate those spaces, we then cannot also create safe spaces that our children and ourselves can be safe in. So the thing that we do with media information literacy is developing critical thinking skills, which means you're able to look at things and understand, what is being said and why. You recognize bias, spin, misinformation, and lies. You understand the techniques of persuasion being used online. You understand how media shapes our culture and our society. You can identify targeted marketing strategies, and you can advocate for changes to the media system. Now, this is remarkably important because I know for a lot of people, the thing that people are mostly scared about is how safe are our children from child sexual exploitation and all of these other things. But we are realizing now as we look at privacy and access to being able to keep your privacy, your online personas safe. Sorry, hold on a second. I'm sorry about that. One of the things that happens is that our children being online, they are creating huge amounts of data about themselves. They're creating huge, a lot of data that's being used to target them. And that's why you realize where you find kids who are watching or playing games, as was said earlier, and they buy, they sort of buy the game because they don't understand that this is actual money. They might not understand that this is actual, that this is something that actually costs, that what is happening online is actually, seen in real life. So if we as adults don't understand how these things work, we cannot help our young people navigate these spaces. So we talk about things called as news values, which is timelines. When are things happening and where are they in the timeline? What proximity do people have to information? What impact is there with your news? What consequences are there with the news? Conflict, what kind of conflicts are within that space? What viewpoints are being given prominence? I think Caroline talked about the gender gap. Are we seeing more male views over female views? Are we seeing more of privileged people rather than underprivileged people? Are we seeing more of abled people rather than people living with disabilities? Then there's novelty, which is the newness of things, and human interest. And these news values are remarkably important to be able to learn about for yourselves and to teach your children as well, and young people, because we know for a fact, for instance, that conflict is used quite a lot. We call it rage baiting. It's used quite a lot to push a lot of, sort of narratives and misinformation and different things. And what the impact that has on young people tends to be really great. And because we do not have systems in place that allow us to work around that, we don't know how to support children when they're in those spaces. So very quickly, we've talked about this. The key concepts is what information, what the information sources, where the information coming from. Is it news? Is it entertainment? Or what is it that you're getting out of it? And the four main are access, analyze, create, and reflect. Those are the main skills. And we run a whole bunch of skills around that. So one of the things that we push for with all our trainings is understanding updates and different platforms, how they work and what the risks are when you're on those platforms. The risks that you will find when you are on Facebook are very different from the risks that you'll find if you're on Reddit or you're on Twitch or you're on 4chan or you're on Instagram. Those risks are very, very different. And then, being able to understand that, because you have experience in facilitating yours and safeguarding your digital identity, being able to have open conversations with young people about risks and safeguarding their digital identities. And then the final thing I think that is important is creating frameworks and tools that would be able to support young people online. I think if there's one thing that I would say that I hope, within this group, that we could take, you guys could take from what we've been able to do, within our groups and the different organizations that we're working with, is we, for instance, have the Coalition on Online Violence Against Women and Women Journalists. And what is on that site is that you actually have, I want to support, like, different prompts. I want to support someone who's going through something. What can I do? If someone is being targeted and they're a friend, how do I help them, safeguard and secure their accounts? How do I help them navigate whatever trolling or things that they are experiencing? And for me, I think that is remarkably important, and it is something that a lot of people might not have access to, and it's something that I think is needed for young people across the world. And I think there's a couple of resources that I do have that I can share with the people in this group. And I think if I just share, for instance, the Coalition Against Online Violence, and what this is a response hub. And so the people who are part of this, all the organizations that are part of this, have a system where if you're a woman journalist, if you're an activist or something, you can actually come here and look at, who am I? Am I a journalist? Am I a newsroom? I want to support someone. And then, you have resources around that. So if we're able to sort of sit together with the people creating the news online, which is the media, influencers, bloggers, organizations, CSOs, and figure out, is there somewhere where if you're a teenager, if you're Brian, for instance, and you think that you are being harassed and you cannot talk to the police or someone else, is there somewhere else that you can go to where you have people who know what to do and they're able to help you? And this is very volunteer based. But I think it's remarkably important because I don't think our laws have reached, especially in Africa. I don't think one of the previous speakers talked about that. I don't think our laws have reached the state where law enforcement even understands what the effects of things like doxing, revenge porn, things like bullying. They don't understand what that does to people. And what we have seen that it does for women is that they step out of those spaces. They cannot exist in those spaces. And so, as much as we would want to make sure that we have spaces for children as well, we also need to make sure that our spaces that we're on, our social media spaces, are moderated in a way that allows people with disabilities, that allow children, women, and other minority and underserved groups to actually be able to feel safe, to be part of the online space, and to also learn from it. Because from past experience, when a child has been bullied online, and I have my teenage daughter, that happened to her by her own friends. So when she's been bullied online, it becomes very difficult for them to trust being on these spaces. It becomes very difficult for them to want to be on these spaces. You will remove yourself from everything. And it's the same thing that we've seen other people doing, and grown-ups and adults. So how do we make sure that whatever space you're in, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Mastodon, if you're on any of these other new spaces, that your children, any child that you see in that space, you're able to make that space safe for them. I think media information literacy, and it's a very long topic. It's something that we do quite a lot of, it helps people understand how the media works, what the risks actually are. And I think that once we as adults understand that, once we as policymakers understand that, then we can sit down and start telling young people, this is what you need to do. This is what is going to help you sort of put yourself together and keep yourself safe. This is where you can go for help. And yeah, I think I think I've said a lot. I will share the resources that I have with Frashia and Jenny after this. Yvonne, back to you.
Thank you so much, Naima, for those very important reflections on media and information literacy, really unpacking the importance of inclusion for vulnerable persons to feel safe, but also some of the key aspects we need to be reflecting on developing critical thinking skills, and how we should understand how the media shapes our culture and society. I was really excited as well to hear about the Coalition Against Online Violence Against Women. And I think this would be something that we might want to further engage you on, to see whether we can have a similar coalition that would support the online protection of children as they are using technology as an opportunity to advance their rights. So colleagues, we've come to almost the penultimate stage of the program, where I'll be opening the floor for questions. But I will just want the panelists that are still on the call to perhaps reflect on Grace's question on how we can ensure that technology is inclusive for persons with disabilities. I know Naima had touched on it, as well as Caroline, but if there's any panelists who would like to give maybe a minute to give more practical examples of how this has been happening in Africa, that would be sincerely appreciated. And then we can then open another second round of comments and questions after the panelists answer to Grace Areba's question. So panelists, anyone would like to take a step?
Grace says she would like to add to her question, if you can just indulge her.
Sure. Thank you so much, Leonie. Grace, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. There was someone who, I can't remember, Mungai. There was someone called Mungai, gave a very good presentation. Is it my internet or internet? I'm very, very worried, very worried about what is happening, specifically when we talk about deaf children. There are very many deaf children out there. They're not very well educated. They don't understand technology very well. And I'm wondering, as we talk about this digital space, how are we thinking about people like those? And as we continue to ensure that these children also enjoy these spaces. For example, if parents themselves do not even understand about technology, how do they get involved even in guiding their children? While still, if the children are deaf because of communication challenges, how can we achieve that? Maybe we can engage and let's think about that.
Thank you so much, Grace and Leonie. Any panelists would like to respond to Grace's reflections and questions? I think Naima, it's directed to you, and we can then give Selemani as well. I'll start with Naima and then Selemani. Thank you.
I think one of the things that's actually happening now, Grace, and it's a very good question, is that we're realizing that if we do not take everyone with us, a lot of that is a lot of people are being left behind. And this is people who are deaf, people who are blind, people who have dyslexia. And there's a lot of things that are being done. I know Selemani might talk about this, and I know that Microsoft is very big on that. There's a lot of accessibility tools that are being built into what is being done. But one of the things, for instance, that we do is make sure that whatever we do, there's closed captioning, I think things like that. We also try to make sure that we set up access to, what we call alt text, for instance, with images, and especially with our stories and the kind of journalism that we do, and also interacting with a lot of people. And I think it's worse for young children. But I think that it is something that's now becoming important across the world. In Africa, we are not. I don't think we're moving as fast as we can. I don't think we're thinking about it that quickly. And it's something that we do need to sort of ramp up a little bit more. And it's one of those things that once you start doing safeguarding work, you realize exactly which people have been left behind. So looking for people who, allow for screen readers, people who allow for closed captioning, alt text, people who allow for stories to be read out for those who are, for those who can't see or have poor eyesight. Those kind of things are remarkably important. And they're things that we are building into our journalism and into the way we sort of do things. I don't know if I answered your question, but there's a huge gap there. You're very right. There's a very, very huge gap there.
Thanks, Suleiman.
Thank you, Grace, for the question. Again, just to reiterate, that's really, really important when it comes to speaking to inclusivity. And I can share three points that we're looking at from the perspective of Microsoft in terms of things we could do to bridge the disability divide. So first is around products. How do we build products that are inclusive for everyone and that are inclusive for different forms of neurodiversity? So whether it's people who have, hearing disabilities, speech impediments, visual disabilities, or even other forms of neurological divergences in a society, how do we build products that are able to cater for everybody? I think the second thing around products is how do we create, particularly for communities and individuals who need them, affordable devices that then can support those learning or work needs that exist. The second area is around technology. And I think we are seeing a lot of possibilities that technology can provide, particularly when it comes to utilizing artificial intelligence. I think Naima spoke to some of the approaches that are being taken in terms of technological design. And I think we can utilize technology tools to be able to facilitate people of different neurological conditions to be able to integrate better in society. But I think the third and possibly most important thing is around our culture and how we engage in partnerships, right? So creating a culture that is open and supportive for people with different abilities is really central to ensuring that we promote an inclusive culture. So it should not be something that we do as a by the way, but it's something that's inbuilt into everything we do. And so, for example, to commend the organizers of this event by ensuring that we have, the sort of language tools and resources to make sure that different people can be able to participate. So really, I think we can talk about tools, we can talk about technology, but it really is about culture. And it requires all of us to be collectively conscious about the need to include everybody who may not traditionally be afforded the opportunities to participate. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Suleimani and Naima, really finishing off strong on that social consciousness or the consciousness that we need to be inclusive as much as possible. And really thanking Grace for really putting us to task when we issue a recommendation out of this webinar to ensure that the rights of children with special needs as well as other vulnerable groups are considered when we talk about achieving Agenda 2040. So there has been additional reflection in the chat room where colleagues were talking about the need for us to have school-based programs on child safety in the digital space, where Lillian Esemere was saying that there's really an urgent need for us to have country-specific education programs that talk about media and information literacy, but also the importance of child safeguarding. And then Simon Peter Okama was really asking how to ensure that children do not fall prey on online sexual exploitation, which is a huge challenge to them, also not exposed to becoming recruited into the same-sex issues. And I know our colleague Willie Buluso really talked about some of the key data that was coming out from the Disrupting Harm study that they conducted, but I also gave him the floor shortly for him to maybe reflect on how we can really ensure that our children do not fall prey to online sexual exploitation. And then there was one comment from an anonymous attendee who has experience in child safeguarding, that when we talk about the protection of children online, there's usually an assumption that all parents in Africa are digitally savvy, yet Africa remains largely rural, with majority of parents digitally illiterate. So I think that was just more of a reflection for us, again, like Brian King was saying, to simplify some of these information around technology so that those that are not as illiterate or do not have access to very technical information can also be able to absorb the information so that they can adequately protect their children. So Willie, I'll also perhaps give you the floor to respond to Simon Peter Okama's question on how we can ensure that children do not fall prey to online sexual exploitation. Then we'll open it up for more direct engagement. Thanks, Willie. You have the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Yvonne. I will briefly respond to that question as I did it in my presentation. There is no things like taking the phone from our teenagers. So we are living in a techno-IT society where children have access to internet and to all tools, technology, based on the technology development. The only things we can do for now is to involve our children, and at all levels, starting from parent level, caregivers, and at school level, to sensitize our children for the best use of internet. As you see, perpetrators, they are everywhere, in Facebook, in TikTok, in Instagram, and sometimes they will use a fake photo, pictures, showing that they are also another 12 years girls talking to another one, but while those are perpetrators. So the only things we can do now as speaking to children, speaking to young people, is us as parents, as teachers, sensitize our kids on the best use of technology and internet. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie, for reiterating the importance of child engagement and not being punitive, but creating that enabling space for them to navigate technology safely. Then Paul Lodon is saying there's a need to emphasize on media enterprises' responsibilities with regards to child protection from abuse. Enterprises should invest in creating safer digital spaces, trainings, and child risk management protocols. I really think I agree with you, Paule, and Selemani had touched upon some of the key entry points in terms of where private sector could play a role, as well as Caroline. But perhaps I would give them another minute for them to reflect on this suggestion that we really need the private sector actively engaging in digital technology access and ensuring that it's safe and enabling for children. Selemani and Caroline, do you have, and Naima as well? Selemani, do you have anything to add?
Thanks. As a starting point, I think it's important for players in the You let me know when I can proceed.
Oh, sure, you can proceed, Suleiman.
Okay, thank you. So I was saying it's important for players in the sector for that responsibility to start internally, right? So by ensuring that in the products, tools, and services that we deploy, particularly where children will interact with these products, tools, or services, that we take up the responsibility of ensuring that those spaces are safe for children. And I think there's two things we could possibly do on that. I think on the one end, for platforms that host content, we should ensure that we actively make sure that the content that's there is safe by engaging in content moderation, by ensuring that the platforms themselves are built in a manner that support safety for children, but then also by empowering, and I think this is really key, empowering users and guardians to be able to know how to both detect, to be aware of their rights, to detect information or content that may be harmful, but then most importantly, to ensure that they can raise these concerns and that there are content that's found online. So I think those three things, if we do them collectively as players, we can contribute to a safer space online. Safe to say, some of these challenges are not peculiar to the online space. There are much wider societal challenges that we need to face, and I think that's a question for all of us as conscious citizens to be mindful of. What sort of behaviors and cultures are we creating in society, and then how are those feeding into the spaces where children engage and interact online? So we all must play a role collectively, whether as parents or as users on these spaces, to really be deliberate when it comes to ensuring that we create safe spaces for kids online. Thanks.
Thanks, Suleiman. Caroline, briefly, anything to add? And then Naima. Naima, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I think my network is starting to pull a little bit of stance. I agree with Selemani's point on sort of creating cultures. I think also that if enterprises and software developers and technology makers can actually work with organizations like the Localization Lab that are doing a lot of good work in trying to make sure that technology software is translated into languages that people use in different areas. And that would be a good way of also making that, because it will then make it easier for parents, for instance, who may not be versed in English, or as Grace was saying, people who are who are living with any kind of disability, they then can be able to interact with it and be able to set the pace for their children as well. So localization, I think, is a very big part of that sort of environment. And that will also, I think there's Anonymous who had and asked about that Africa remains largely rural. I think one of the ways that we are working around that is to try work specifically and quite a lot with community radio stations. And what that does for us is that it ensures that people can can actually be educated around, this is social media, this is Facebook, this is how you use it, this is what you should be looking out for, this is what misinformation looks like. So I think leveraging community structures is remarkably important, to increase the idea of safe spaces for children and young people. Yvonne, back to you.
Thanks, Naima. All right, colleagues, I'm cognizant that we are 5 minutes to the end of the program. So is there any other burning question or reflection? Maybe I'll take one before I hand over to Plan International to close for us. Is there anyone with a burning question? All right. Okay. Seems there's no additional question. So thank you so much, colleagues. We are now. Oh, sure.
Sorry. Grace has something. Sorry, it took long before I opened my voice.
Oh, no worries. Sure. Grace has the floor.
All right. Mine is not a question. I would humbly ask maybe if there is anybody who is willing to work on issues inclusivity of persons with disability, because it has become like something people don't understand what disability is and what the experiences are there in the world of persons with disability. So I'll comment or ask if anybody has an initiative or an idea about persons with disability and approach on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace and Jockey. I certainly agree that I think there will be some organizations that are really trying to understand how we embed inclusivity in the digital sphere. So, Grace, perhaps you could put your email address in the chat box, and then if there are any organizations that find the work that you are doing strategic, they can then reach out to you, and then you can then take further the partnerships forward. I hope that's fine. So perhaps, Grace, just type in, if possible, your email address, and then colleagues can be in touch with you. So colleagues, we've come to the end of a very good session where we really looked into the normative frameworks. We looked into the ways we could leverage in digital technology by hearing from the private sector. Also heard from the non-governmental organizations, ECPAT and Save the Children. But more importantly, because it's a day that reflects the needs of children, we also heard from young people about what their perspectives are in terms of how we can use technology to achieve the aspirations that are in Agenda 2040. So at this juncture, I'm going to provide the floor to George Kamau, the Director of Program Strategy Development and Innovation at Plan International, to provide us the closing remarks, and hopefully that this webinar will be shared, and some of the recommendations that are coming out will also be shared to the African Committee of Experts around the importance of awareness raising, inclusivity, accelerating normative framework changes, all those some of the key aspects to ensure the African Committee of Experts is aware of. So, George Kamau, you have the floor to close this very good program for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, George. Thanks, George. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Before I make the closing remarks, I want to really thank all those who have been involved in this, organizing this webinar, and in particular, the engagement that I've seen. I jumped in just at the time Martha was making the opening remarks, that I've followed the discussion. And I want to say that Grace, probably Grace Areba, we could think, we can take this discussion and see beyond even the inclusivity in technology. We can also see what else that we could do as an organization. Plan International is very keen and keen on supporting inclusivity and ensuring that there is no one is left behind. Having said that, I want to indicate that I'm making these remarks on behalf of the country director of Kenya, George Otim, who has traveled to Western Kenya to join the celebrations, the national celebrations tomorrow. So allow me to start. All protocols observed. Excellencies, panel members, girls, boys, young people, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and partners. I would like to thank the organizers of this event for inviting me and inviting Plan to make these closing remarks during this year's commemoration of the Day of the African Child, under the theme, The Rights of the Child in Digital Environment. On behalf of Plan International and on my own behalf, I would like to use this occasion to pay tribute to all children, particularly girls, who unfortunately continue to bear the burden of societal injustices and who are unable to protect, who we are unable to protect at all times on digital platforms. These children continue to strive and survive under very challenging circumstances. We owe them a great deal of gratitude and appreciation for their bravery and resilience, which led to the unfortunate events on June 16, 1974. I would also use this platform to wish all the children of Africa Happy Children's Day, which falls tomorrow. Notwithstanding the challenges the children face, it is also heartwarming and encouraging to note that the various countries have formulated policies, legal frameworks, and have invested in various infrastructure and frameworks to ensure children are safe online. But I need to add that most of these policies, they remain largely unimplemented. I want to call upon partners here and beyond to ensure that we have implementation mechanism so that these great frameworks and legal policies can be put into place. Millions of children and young people in Africa live in environments where violence, child marriages and unions, FGM, gender inequality, climate change, hunger, and armed conflict deprive them from being children and shatters any hope of a meaningful future. As we commemorate this day within the framework of the Agenda 2040, it is important we recognize that the laudable aspiration can only be achieved through strengthened and deliberate partnership among the stakeholders. Achieving the fundamentals of Agenda 2040 could elude us unless we step up our interventions and investments to create a continent that is fit for its children and by extension, its people. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, achieving an Africa fit for its children, an aspiration of the Agenda 2040 over the next 19 years will only happen through an accelerated transformation of our institutions and a well thought out partnership and collaborative structures, frameworks, and effort. We need to be deliberate and forge alliances which will leverage our collective experiences, expertise, and resources. Our distinguished panel discussed the theme of leveraging on digital technology to achieve Agenda 2040 for an Africa fit for children. it is important to take note of our respective recommendations as agreed, and look for ways of integrating these recommendations into the work we do as partners. It will be important to track the implementation of these recommendations, and as part of our own accountability towards children, where we explore and harness potentials of the digital space. As an organization that advances children's rights and equality and inclusion for girls, Plan International reaffirms its strong commitment to continue to work with all relevant stakeholders to build strong partnership for 1, change in registrations on cybersecurity, 2, protection of children's rights, and 3, accelerating efforts towards the achievement of the aspirations of the Agenda 2040 through a protective digital space. As an organization, we reiterate our commitment to work with other partners to ensure a safe and a protective digital space for all our children. I thank you all. Thank you, and back to you, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, George, for those beautifully delivered closing remarks and for reiterating the importance of accelerating transformation of our institutions to meet the digital era that we are living in. Colleagues, it has been a sincere pleasure to have you on this webinar, engaging on a very important and emerging issue. And we sincerely thank the African Union Commission through the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, together with the Children of Africa, for identifying this theme as the 2023 theme for the Day of the African Child. To those that will be engaging in other national events tomorrow with children, please enjoy it. And we wish you a happy, happy Day of the African Child tomorrow on June 16th. I wish you all a pleasant evening and look forward to engaging further on other broader child rights issues in Africa. Thank you so much. And the webinar is closed. Thank you.